So many club and recreational players would love to move and hit their forehands like Grigor Dimitrov. So in today's video, we are going to cover 4 technical tips that you can emulate that will hopefully get you closer to moving and hitting like the Bulgarian. The first thing we'll do is we'll just watch him hit 3 forehands. Okay, let's go back here, and one of the first things that you can try to emulate if we're trying to get closer to Grigor Dimitrov's forehand and his movement is actually to do with his footwork and how he uses his lower body. So coming out of a split step here, you'll notice that Dimitrov has a really wide base. So if I were to put a line through here, and another line through here. His feet are almost, you could say, twice the width of his shoulders. If his shoulders are here, his feet are almost twice the width. Now, obviously, everyone has different limitations with their bodies and what they can do, but I still encourage club and recreational players that I work with to pay attention to their split step and just see if they can lower their center of mass. And that's for a couple reasons. If you have a lower center of mass, you can move out of the split step into whichever direction you want to go just a little bit faster as opposed to if you weren't as low. And the second part is, and this is something we'll delve into later into this video, is it'll just help you use the ground a lot better. Club and recreational players try to use all sorts of, we could say inefficient sources of power to hit the ball hard. One of them is I often see the racket taken really far back to hit the ball hard. Now, if you look at the best ball strikers in the world, that's not where they get their power from. They're using separation between the body segments and they're using the ground. So if we look at Dimitrov, we'll notice just how wide he is and how much he sinks into the ground so that he can push up and out from it, so that he's using ground reaction forces. So if you go out and film yourself, this is one of the things you can check in on. How wide are your feet coming out of the split step? If you're too upright, too up and down and standing too tall, you won't be able to move as efficiently as if you were a little bit lower and you had a wider base and a lower center of mass. Second thing that you can try and emulate from Grigor Dimitrov's forehand, and that is his preparation. So Dimitrov has a really compact preparation where if we look at his racket and if we look at his non-hitting hand, you'll notice that his non-hitting hand is parallel to the baseline, and you could say the tip of the racket is in essentially the same place. So having a fairly compact preparation like this does a couple things. So the first is it just reduces the amount of calculations you have to make to get the racket head into the right place. So if we watch Dimitrov here, look at how the racket head will just fall. He'll just relax essentially the shoulder, the hitting shoulder back there. The racket head will just fall into the slot or close to the body. And then as the hand starts moving forward, he's basically creating a quote-unquote lag, and touch on that in just a little bit of time. But if we go back to his preparation, it's just extremely simple and efficient. You don't want to have a crazy big backswing where the racket is all the way back here, just because there is a timing issue that comes into it if you start taking your racket head all the way back there. The second part about having a compact backswing like this is it'll be a little bit easier for you to take the ball early, to take it on the rise, and to attack the net because of how simple it is for you to get the racket into the right place. So if you want to be an all-court player, I would recommend you learning to have a compact backswing on your forehand, a compact backswing or a compact preparation. It'll just make everything easier for you to get the racket into the right place. Hey everyone, just a quick interruption to say thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying the video, please like and subscribe. It does help the channel grow. And if you're enjoying my content in general, please consider checking out the Fast 4. It's my weekly newsletter where I send one actionable tip designed to improve your tennis in 4 minutes or less. You can find the link in the description below. And now we're getting onto a really important fundamental, which is the inside out movement. So whenever we talk about this, there's always some clarification that's required for players. And we're not talking about the inside out in terms of direction where the right hander will move into the left side of their court and hit into the backhand of the other right hander. We're talking about how the racket will move essentially from close to the body to away. And this is really a fundamental where if you're playing at a high level, you essentially will recreate this movement where the racket will come from close to the body and it'll go away into the contact. So if we look at Dimitrov here, notice how far away he has swung from his body. There's a few things that go on here, and one of them is the racket moves fastest away from the body. Of course, there are players we see, for example, Jannik Sinner, who does not contact so far away from his body. He contacts with more of a bent elbow. I'm definitely not saying there's only one way to do it, but in general, if we're talking about just effortless power, you want to get the racket head moving from close. Here we go. It's close to away. So it's moving from close all the way to away. And then notice again what we chatted about just before is look at the tip of his racket and look at his hand, and that just allows him to move the racket from close to away. And this one is really critical, and that is, where will Dimitrov's hitting hand finish? One of the most common things I see with players who come to me is that their hitting hand will finish quite low and essentially not high enough. And what I mean by that is, if we look at where Dimitrov finishes, I'll just speed this up a little bit. Look at his hitting hand. It's finishing roughly a little bit higher than his shoulder. So one of the best things about YouTube and the internet in general is that players all over the world have access to footage so that they can see how players at the highest levels hit the ball. But one of the most common, I guess, misunderstandings that I find is that players think that this is where the finish is, where the hand is nice and low. So again, I'll give you a caveat because there are no absolutes. Of course, there are players who have lower finishes. Someone like a Nick Kyrgios comes to mind, but I really recommend that if you want to have a forehand that has revolutions, trajectory, and compression as well, you want to finish the hitting hand essentially by your opposite eye. So if we watch again, the racket goes from close to away, and then look at where the hitting hand finishes. Really pay attention to that. It's fairly high. And that's because fundamentally, we've talked about this before, it's a lifting game. You have to lift the ball over the net and into the court. Swinging from below the ball and getting the racket vertical will ensure you get enough revolutions, get it inside the court, but you need to also have a swing path that goes upwards and outwards if you really want to play this game well. So if you go out and film yourself, really check in on where your hitting hand is finishing consistently. Is it finishing low and across your body here, or are you lifting the ball enough, giving it trajectory and really clearing that first obstacle that you have, which is the net?